Ammosmith.com. Today we're going to start a series on load development. We're going to be working with the 30-06. We're going to be using the Hodgson reloading manual. We're going to be using the 30-06 because it's a very popular hunting cartridge and just about everybody has one. But the basics are the same no matter what cartridge you're going to use. So I'm going to open the manual, we're going to focus in on a couple things, and we're going to show you how we start. With the 30-06, we're going to be using one type of brass. We're going to be using Winchester. And we're going to trim the brass to the specification, which is 2.484 inches. But now we got to decide what we're going to do with the rifle. So we're going to be using for hunting, and we have two bullet weights we're going to use. We're going to be using a 220 grain round nose, and we're going to be using a 180 grain spire point. Here are some of the components we'll be starting out with. We're going to be using two basic bullets, the 220 grain Steyr round nose, and the 180 grain soft point interlock from Hornady. We're going to be using Wolf primers and new unfired brass. We're going to be switching powders as we go along, but we're going to develop this with one powder at a time. And what we're looking for is a load that will work good in two different rifles. We're going to be using a Steyr, and we're going to be using a Weatherby rifle, both chambered in 30-06. We'll be using a standard set of 30-06 dice. We're not going to be using competition dice at this point in the load development. We want to save that for some different calibers as we go along. If we look at the manual here, it says with Varget, we want to start out with 44 grains is the starting load, and the maximum is 47 grains. We want to fall somewhere in between that, and so we're going to start with 46. At least with the 180 grain bullet. That gives us the ability to go up in powder charge and down a little bit powder charge in order for us to find that sweet spot with our rifle. With the 220 grain, it calls for a starting load of 42 grains of Varget and a maximum load of 45 grains. And for what we're using, we're going to be using 43.5. For the 220 grain, our initial overall length is going to be 3.199. That's what the manual calls for, and that seats it down to the cantilever so we can crimp it. On the 180 grain, we're seating that to 3.233 inches to the cantilever for a crimp. That's what the manual calls for. But as we go along, we're going to seat them in either a little deeper or seat them out a little further for accuracy. But just for hunting purposes, I just seat to the cantilever. The brass we're going to use, we're going to trim to 2.484 inches. It's really important to use the same brand of brass, and it's very important to make sure that your overall lengths are as close to exact as possible in order to get the best downrange results for your load development. There are a lot of choices of bullets out there for the 30 caliber. On the left we have the Sierra 220 grain round nose, which we chose because it cuts through brush and it's good for semi-dangerous game. This will take down anything in North America. On the right, we have the Hornady Interlock 180 grain soft point. Has a better trajectory. It's not a bow tail, but we're really not shooting 500-600 yards with it. We're only going to probably be shooting at furthest about 250-300 yards for game. It's always a good idea to have a plan for your load development. What's the purpose of your load? In this case, it's hunting. It can also include target shooting, long range shooting, plinking, or even a light load for small game. In load development, it's always important to make sure that you record what your load is. I grade mine A through F. Some grade theirs 1 through 10. But it's always a good idea to keep track of what you're doing, so if you have a load that doesn't work out, you don't repeat history and load the same thing again and be disappointed. There's a wide variety of different powder, primer, and bullet combinations that you can use to develop the best load for the rifle that you have. Here is one of the rifles we'll be using for our testing. It's a Weatherby Weatherguard. and 30-06 is built on a Howa 1500 action. It's a nice smooth action. It's a fairly accurate rifle. It's nothing fancy. It's not custom. It has a Tasco 3x9 scope on her, and that's it. It's a working man's rifle and is built to put meat on the table. The second rifle we'll be using for our test bed is the Steyr MCA. It's a very nice rifle. This one at the moment is in unfired condition. It has a Weaver vintage scope on there because it's an old rifle. I wanted to look right. It's a fairly fine rifle. It's considered to be one of the finest bolt actions ever made. The scope is nothing fancy. It has thin crosshairs, but we'll be able to do some good work with this. We will be using a Crony Gamma Master to record our velocities. Many times the velocities we get will be different than what the manual says. Plus we have two different rifles, so I expect to get two different results from both rifles. The goal is to get one load that will work for both and take to the field. Well, that's pretty much it for now. Thanks for watching. Next time we'll be out in the field testing ammunition. See you next time.